This is Chapter 5, Styles and Tactics. Don't think of each chapter as separate from the others. Remember that styles and tactics reflect your goals and your power currencies, and vice versa. Just a quick review. Tripp and Rice. Tripp, if you remember, refers to the goals one pursues in conflict, not just in general, but during the actual conflict. You can have topic goals, relational goals, identity goals, and process goals. Maybe not all at the same time, but you can pursue those goals in conflict. RICE stands for resource control, interpersonal currencies, communication skills, and expertise. What this means is that you would look at how people are trying to use or assert their power and whether or not those assertions have been confirmed, denied in the conflict. Doesn't matter what happens outside of the conflict because the conflict is its own entity. So you want to keep that in mind. One of the most important things to remember from this chapter on styles and tactics is that those are distinct terms. Styles, or the approaches, are the larger patterns. Think of them as the umbrella terms. They're the patterns of responses, again, in conflict. Styles are made up of tactics. People do specific things or say specific things to implicate their style or approach. Tactics are the specific moves, verbal and nonverbal, that people make in conflict, and those provide you access to the styles. They reflect those styles. Hocker and Wilmot, and many other researchers, use Rahim's classification or dual concern model, which is on the next slide and is also available on page 158 in Hocker and Wilmot's text. This model involves concern for self and concern for others and varies across the different approaches. The approaches that they identify are avoiding, obliging or accommodating, integrating or collaborating, compromising, and then dominating or competing. I did misspeak on the previous slide. It's not page 158 in Hocker and Wilmot. It's 153. But here is the slide. If you notice, on the left-hand side, we have concern for others, how cooperative you are during a conflict. On the bottom, you have concern for self, right? How much you assert yourself and how committed you are to that assertion. If you notice, the 5 styles are laid out across the charts. High on the left, down to low, and then from low to high on the bottom, just like you would look at a math model. Avoiding is both low in concern for self and concern for others. Part of the reason for that is that you don't want to invest in the conflict. Obliging is high in cooperativeness, right? Working with others because you want to please the other person, but you're more worried about them than you are yourself, which is why you are also low in assertiveness for yourself. Then if you move towards the middle, you'll see compromising. Compromising is more mid-range for concern for self and concern for others, because the goal is to try to find a quick solution, something that doesn't have to be threaded throughout your entire relationship. So for example, If I want to go bowling and you want to go roller skating, a quick compromise would be, all right, let's just go roller skating this time and next time we'll go bowling. Dominating, of course, on the bottom right-hand side is going to be high in assertiveness because your goal is to win, right? That's what you want to do. You want to win that conflict. Therefore, your concern for others is low, almost non-existent at all, unless you really enjoy the kind of play that can happen in competitiveness or dominating. The most difficult of all of the approaches is the top one on the right, and that's integrating or collaborating. This requires deeper connections, deeper concern for self and for others, to try to get below the quick and easy compromise to find out why it is somebody might need something or want something, to think about the goals, to think about the power structures, emotions, everything you can about that conflict. So it requires more time and patience. The first choice you have when it comes to conflict, if you choose to engage, is to avoid. And that might sound weird when you say choose to engage, but you avoid. Well, I can engage in a conflict, but do it through an avoidance style. I can deny that the conflict exists. You're making something out of nothing, for example. I can change or avoid the topic. Oh, it's a lovely day today, isn't it? I could be non-committal. I can say maybe, maybe, maybe. I can even joke, right? Maybe even some of my sarcasm comes through here so that I'm not dealing with the topic. Or I can postpone it. Say, you know what, I'm not going to get into this now. That might be your approach. So you have your tactics, which are denial of the conflict, changing or avoiding the topic, being non-committal, joking, or postponement. Those reflect the larger style, which is avoidance, which has low concern for self and low concern for others. In the obliging or accommodating style, remember that you have low concern for yourself, but high concern for the others. You're very worried about what the other person might think, how it might affect the relationship. You want to make sure their needs are met. So there are specific tactics that you might use, and one, of course, is to just give in to the others, right? Whatever they want to do, you do. And it's okay to do that. If you do that all the time, then you might start to feel a little bit more defensive as the relationship grows and develops, because the other person may become expectant of having you oblige them all the time. But giving in to others can be a positive thing depending on the type of conflict you're in. You can also promote calm. Promoting calm means that you might say things like, all right, let's take a minute here. Okay, tell me again what you mean by this, right? Slowing the conversation down, the intensity, trying to lessen the intensity, okay, of a conflict. And then being supportive, saying things like, I hear what you're saying, right? Listening appropriately by nodding your head in agreement or understanding. So being supportive, promoting calm, giving in to others, those are three tactics that one can use when using the obliging or accommodating style or approach. As I explained in an earlier slide, integrating or collaborating means having a high concern for yourself, for others, for the problem or the conflict itself, and the relationship. This is where the relationship becomes most pronounced. It's not about you or me, it's about us. We want to seek mutual agreement and resolution, but we don't want to lose something in the midst of that. Compromising means we find a quicker solution rather than really digging deeper. So in a sense, it's a loss for both parties. When you're doing integrating or collaborating, that is when you are really trying to find a mutual agreement or a resolution that meets the needs of both parties. Some of the tactics might be to use we language, not I. Instead of saying, well, I want to do this, you say, well, we've talked about doing these things together in the past, right? Trying to use we language. You might solicit criticism. Can you please tell me what it is I've done wrong? How is it that I have offended you? Because if you don't know, you'll never be able to resolve the conflict. So try to solicit criticism. Offer supportive remarks, maybe empathetic remarks. Offer concessions about yourself. You're right. I wasn't being fair in that sense. That would be a statement that you might hear when somebody's really trying to work with the other person. Acceptance of responsibility. I said that. I didn't mean it the way it sounded, but I did say it. I am sorry. So you're accepting responsibility. And there are many ways each of these tactics can show up. But one of the most important things to remember is that this is very difficult and it requires practice. But you can do it. The fourth style is compromising. Again, think of this as the one that we will often pursue because it's quick and easy. It says, let's find a mutual solution or another option. But it wants to do so quickly without really concerning itself with the relationship. It's not as deep or intense as integrating or collaborating. Medium concern for self and others. Think about that model image that I showed a few slides ago. Some of the tactics you might see are trade-offs or exchanges. Appeals to fairness. Well, it's not fair. We did that last time. We should do this time. Split the difference. Why don't we go bowling for an hour and then we'll go roller skating for an hour? Change roles. Maybe you oscillate between you and others. Maybe you give in more and the other person gives in less the next time. Meet in the middle. Let's just do both. But if you're not finding out why you want to meet in the middle, that's when you're not working towards integration and caring about the relationship. And most often you're trying to find temporary solutions. And when you find temporary solutions, you often do not think about people's emotions and how those might be impacting the particular conflict. So remember, compromising is really more like a lose-lose situation because you're looking for something quick and easy as opposed to something that might require more time and energy to get to the heart of a conflict that you might be having. For the last style, I think I said the previous one was the last style, so if I did, I apologize. But dominating or competing, this is one that a lot of people like, especially when they feel like they have a lot of power currencies that they can use in conflicts. High concern for self. It's all about me, me, me. And low concern for others. Your goal is to win that conflict, or the other person's goal is to win that conflict. So you have high aggression and assertiveness, but low cooperativeness. Notice that the word aggression comes in because it might actually be more aggressive. You can assert yourself without being aggressive. When you're dominating and competing, you might end up more towards the aggressive side depending on what style the other person is using. So imagine if you have two competing styles, eventually you are going to have an increase in aggression, which may lead to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that we spoke about in an earlier chapter. You might do personal criticism or abusive talk. We hear this a lot. When people get frustrated that they're not getting their point across, they might start name calling, saying things about people from previous conflicts that they've had, hold something over them. They might even harass somebody. Coercive control. So you might see, for example, a parent who's trying to argue with a child, and then all of a sudden the parent grabs the child's hand and says, let's go, we're going, that's coercive control. And this happens in adult relationships, unfortunately, as well. Bullying. Bullying happens a lot, and that's why it's an important part of this course for us to talk about bullying. But bullying can happen in a multitude of ways, and you'll learn more about that as we continue in the course. But just think about ways in which people say or do things during conflict to indicate that they want to win and they don't care about the other participant. Now, overall, you have to consider that there are always two conflict styles at play: my competitiveness and your competitiveness. My competitiveness and your avoidance. So if you think about it, there are many options for how we engage. If we're both integrating, that means we both have a high concern for self and the other. And that is going to take time, but it'll build relationships and set the tone for future conflicts. As a final reminder, tactics make up the styles. They are the verbal and nonverbal forms of communication we use in conflict. So you're looking at what people say and what people do. So as you were analyzing the Calvin and Hobbes for your last couple of posts, I want you to be thinking about, what is somebody saying or doing? What does Hobbes do or say? What are the facial expressions? What are the gestures? Is there a tone of voice? Is there an increase in volume? Are they wearing something that tries to provide them more power, right? So you want to be able to look at what things are said and done by each participant, because I can assert a tactic and use it, but somebody else may deny it, which goes back to our power currencies. So our goals, our power currencies, and our styles and tactics are interwoven. And this is why analysis can be so difficult, because you have multiple ways you can approach it. So as you're continuing through the course, I want you to think about goals, power currencies, and tactics and styles all the time, because they inform each other and help make your analysis clearer.